want to focus tonight's hack. I'm talking about those middle schoolers. These middle schoolers that are resistant, right? They are resistant to you coming and pulling them out of their classes. They are resistant to wearing their hearing aids. They are resistant to wearing that personal mic. FM, DM, whatever you want to call it, right? They are resistant to that. They don't want to do it. They don't want to be called out for having a hearing loss. And yet they're struggling. Yet they're struggling. So it's not like you can say, all right, well, my services aren't needed because you see them and you know that if they were to wear their hearing aids or if they were to use that microphone or if they were to look to the interpreter or if they were to do any of that stuff, that it would benefit them, but they are pushing back on it. Now, this typically happens middle school, and oftentimes it begins kind of like that fourth, fifth grade,
Mhm.
and sometimes it continues into high school, right? But oftentimes high school happens and kids start to kind of turn around a little bit and things start to change a little bit depending on, it really depends. I'll tell you, the research shows it depends on the foundation that's built in elementary school. The foundation that's built in elementary school generally shows how a student will turn around once they get to high school. If they didn't bond with their hearing aids and all of that stuff in elementary school, if there wasn't any kind of acceptance, if they didn't bond with it in elementary school, then back in high school, once this middle school is a big transition. Once we get to high school, the research shows that they're probably not going to be bonded with that hearing technology, and it's a tough battle. If they were really bonded with their hearing aids and technology, then we hit middle school. It's a hard transition. It's a tough road. But if it's done well and if it's done right, then the research shows that once high school happens, then they will often go back to those roots that they had in elementary school, where they're back to their value of that technology. But those middle school years are rough. Those middle school years are rough. Do you know why? What's the most important thing in the life of a middle schooler?
They want to
And,
be
and
like
this isn't like
everybody
individual, this is
else.
developmentally. Say it again, Julie.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know if that was rhetorical or not. I
Yeah,
have 4 middle schoolers, and they don't want to stand out. They just want to be like everybody else and just fit
that's
in.
it. That is exactly it. And I see it in the chat. The most important thing developmentally in those adolescent years is fitting in and not being different. And and this is the phase that kids are realizing, oh, wait a second, I'm different. And they're trying to figure that out. And what does that look like? And how can they not be different? And so this is where you start to see that rejection of those hearing aids, like in a big way. Hearing aids, FM systems, interpreters. I have had students who were profoundly deaf, who were so mad that they had an interpreter with them and would literally turn their back to the interpreter, not wanting to see the interpreter, not wanting to look at the interpreter, and doing everything that they could in their power to not need or not use that interpreter because they didn't want to be different. So today I'm kind of focusing on this particular population of kids inside the online itinerant, the professional academy, and also I think the parent program as well, is a training that's called Creating Peers When There Are No Peers. If you are an academy member, I recommend that you check that out. It's taught by me, and this is kind of like, how can we normalize hearing loss for our students, because that's what it's all about, and that's our hack. Is we have to be able to figure out ways to normalize their experience for them. But for most of us who are working with students in their neighborhood school, which by the way is about 90% of students are in their neighborhood school. So this is a big flip from when I started my career, when most students were in a program or in a residential school and very few were in their neighborhood school. Now we're completely flipped the other way, where most kids are in their neighborhood school and few of them, like 10% or so, are in a program or in a residential school. So that means what they need is kids need other kids that are like them so that they don't feel so different. But it's not it doesn't happen. It's not necessarily an easy fix because if you've got one kid with a hearing loss and there's another kid with a hearing loss and you're like, "Great, there's a peer." It doesn't mean they're going to have that chemistry and they're going to want to be friends. Doesn't mean that they're going to like each other or have anything in common. So it's not just about finding someone, anyone, but it's about being able to find somebody that your students can connect with and can feel like, yes, this is somebody who gets me. So, first and most important thing I want to talk about tonight is above all else, you want to avoid being the hearing aid police. We do not want to be chasing down kids and saying, "Where's your hearing aid? Go get your hearing aid. Where's your FM system? Go get your FM system." And chase them down, make them find it, do all of that stuff at this age, at this middle school age. Because what happens when you start pushing in like this and trying to force kids into a place where they feel very uncomfortable, this is where they start to push back, and this is where they get very resentful, and this is where they push away, and it actually does more damage than help. So,
Mm.
at this age, at this middle school age, we really wanna avoid being the hearing aid police, and you guys know what I mean when I say the hearing aid police, right? Okay. Now that doesn't mean that we don't wanna encourage hearing aids, we do. We don't wanna It's not that we don't wanna discourage the use of not using them. Like, we want our students to use them when they're helpful, absolutely, but we don't wanna be that person, that mother, right, or that policeman who's chasing them down and shaking our finger and making it a negative experience for them. Now, with that, I do want to give a little disclaimer that for kids in elementary school, when we're building those habits and we are working on that consistency and we're making sure that they've got that language and that value, it's a little different. We can expect to say, no, we wear our hearing aids in school, and especially at those young ages. And for parents, if you are a parent here, then you should always be the parent and set those boundaries and set that expectation. I always want to encourage that. I do always want to encourage that. But as professionals, as teachers, we want to be able to be that coach, right? To be the confidant, to be that person that we can talk about it with them. And we want to be the person that walks alongside of them and we can work with them when they have their challenges and we can say, "Hey, you're not wearing your hearing aid. Like, tell me about that. Like, what's going on with that?" And let them just be able to get to a place of comfort with you that they are willing to say, "I don't like it. I don't want to. This is because," and being able to be that person that says, "All right, well, if you don't wear your hearing aid, what is that going to mean? Like, what are you going to miss out on?" And being able to, what we say, kind of coach them through that. So, in the cafeteria, is it hard to have lunch and to eat in the cafeteria with the kids? Like, what are you doing with that? Well, what do you think? How can we make that better? And maybe even consider brainstorming ideas that would support them, even without their technology if they need to. Say, all right, well, if you're not going to wear your technology, I really think you should. But if you're not going to, what's a way that we could work around it? And working with them to be able to kind of talk about it and break through it. Now, these kids that have built this relationship with their technology early on, they're struggling with it now. What we know is being able to have this conversation and coaching them and being able to say something like I've got a lot of students who they don't like that FM system. I still call it an FM system. I'm old school. They don't like to hand it off to their teachers. For some reason, that handoff and that picking it up to them it puts them in this zone of they don't like it, right? So let me say, well, all right, well, what if you don't have to hand it off to them? Like what if they come and get it to you? What if you go up and put it on their desk and then nobody else even notices? Like, how can we work through that it can make you feel more comfortable? So that is hack number one. And when you build a relationship with your student, you'll be amazed. And this is the other thing that's really important is that we need to point out when things are not going well. So, oh, like you're struggling with this. I think it's because you can't hear. I think it's because you're not understanding what's going on. What do you think? And then being able to even say, what do you think would happen if you put your hearing aids back in? Or what do you think would happen if you use that FM system? And kind of getting your students to the point of realization of the consequences and the benefits of wearing and not wearing their hearing technology. So that's part number one. That's hack number one. Hack number two for you is, like I mentioned before, being able to normalize this experience for them so that they can realize, okay, I am not the only person that deals with this. Now, the online itinerant has a self-identity curriculum basically built into the toolbox. And in it, there are like 32 lessons, and they're all different people that all have a hearing loss of different varieties, and they have different types of technology, and they communicate in different ways. And it goes through the gamut, and it builds that they have different types of technology and they communicate in different ways. And it goes through the gamut, and it builds that understanding of who I am and how I connect with this person or not, how I relate, how I'm similar to them or how I'm different. And that is a really huge thing, is to be able to, for them to be able to see that there are other people, but also for you to be able to connect them with the larger worlds of hearing loss, and best of all, peers that they can actually connect with. Now, I know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking. You're like, but they don't have any peers. I don't have anybody else in my school that I can connect them with. But you do, because you have a caseload of students. You have more than one student that you're working with. You have a whole caseload of students that you work with, and you can connect kids to other kids even when they're far away, even when they can't be physically face to face. You can do it through Zoom. You can do it through writing letters. You can do it through sending jokes. I used to always do like a craft activity, but the craft that we would make would actually get sent to the next student on my caseload. So it was always a gift that was coming. And then the kid that I was visiting always was receiving a gift from somebody. And they loved that. That was a game changer. They wanted to come and work with me because they wanted to see what their present was. And for the little girls would make little hearing aid charms, where like if they still have the hearing aids that the tube comes apart, I know the new thin tubes, looks a little different, but then you can put like little decorations on there and they look like earrings, but they're hearing aid rings, hearing aid earrings. So kids would make those and then I would deliver them. And I would do jokes. We would do jokes for the seasons, or we would even just write a note, or we would take a picture of their hearing aid so that the next one could see it. So these are ways that you can connect kids with other kids. And you might know that I love to use the platform Loom. That's Loom, not Zoom, but Loom, which makes little videos. And you can even have kids make videos for the other kid and then show it to them. Show it to the next one. And then the next one can make a video for the next one. And so they're getting some really cool interaction with each other without having to travel. You don't have to do a field trip, even though I love field trips, right? But I know easier said than done, right? I know that, we can't get all the kids together like we would like to, but you can get creative in those ways. I'll mention camps. Summer camps, huge. Summer camp's huge, especially if you can find a summer camp that has to do with a sport or an activity that your student likes. I had a student who was a big hockey player, loved hockey, would not wear his hearing aids, had not bonded with his hearing aids. But there's a big deaf hockey camp of professional hockey players that are coaches at this camp. He went to camp every summer there, and he would come back every year wearing his hearing aids and smiling, and just would feel so good because he was poured into this deaf hockey camp. So summer camps are big. The other way to normalize hearing loss, which everybody forgets, but have you ever pointed out to your students um, all the hearing technology that everybody is using around us? You go to the drive-through restaurant. What do they have? They've got a hearing thing in their ear and a microphone. You look at police officers. They have little microphone. They're using their FM systems that they're talking to people. They've got a communication way of talking. Everybody's walking around with AirPods, with earbuds, and different kinds of earbuds. I've got many students who they don't want to wear their hearing aids, but they want to wear AirPods instead of hearing aids because AirPods look like AirPods and hearing aids look like hearing aids. And of course, Apple's pushing that their AirPods can be hearing aids. So then you're like, okay, great. Thank you, Apple, for making this battle even more difficult for me. But here's the thing with Apple hearing aid. Here's the thing with the Apple AirPods. They do function as hearing aids for like 2 hours until the battery dies. But if you've got a student who like this is a really big deal for them, maybe you can say, all right, well, you're gonna have to, there could be some situations. Maybe you wear your AirPods for 2 hours a day, but then after that, we need to put our hearing aids back in because I don't want you to miss this information. But we wanna kind of work with them at this age a little bit. They bond with you, they respect you, and then when you start sharing with them about the value of hearing aids, it comes from a place of care and respect, and they hear it very differently than they do when you're the hearing aid police and chasing after them. So anyway, normalizing hearing technology that everybody is wearing, people on and the bands. If you've ever seen a band play, everybody's got something in their ear so that they can hear their own music better or communicate or hear what's going on. So once we start pointing this out to our students, game changer. And then the last thing the last point out that I like to say is being able to truly visit with your students and say, everybody is self-conscious about what they're looking like. And the kid maybe next to you is freaking out about their shoes, but you don't notice their shoes, do you? But they are feeling like they've got the ugliest, cheapest, dirtiest shoes, and everybody's staring at them, even though nobody cares. I remember the student that I talked to that I mentioned that would turn his back from the interpreter. I said, the student next to you is can't stop thinking about the pimple on his face.
Yes.
Did you notice the pimple on his face? And my student literally said to me, I never thought of it that way. I never thought of that. And that really changes things for me. So, to really pour into the fact that what you're thinking about is not what the other kids are thinking about. A lot of kids, they don't want to talk about themselves. They don't want to talk about their hearing loss. They don't want to talk about their hearing loss. That's like a bad topic. But they're interested in learning about other people's hearing loss. So that's where the deaf identity unit comes in, where you can like show, hey, we're not talking about you. We're talking about them. And we're going to learn what they do and what they experience. This isn't about you. This is about them. We're going to learn about audiograms, but not your audiogram. We're not going to talk about your audiogram. We're going to talk about other people's audiograms. And what's amazing is that the kids go, oh, me too. Like they look at an audiogram or somebody else, and the next thing you know, they go, oh, me too. I have that same thing. And all of a sudden, they're talking about themselves. But it wasn't pushed upon them. It was just brought up as an opportunity. So, of course, we can also talk about books with deaf characters in it and all of those good things. Also, there are lots of lists inside the Academy that show you those as well. So those are the 3 hacks that I really want to talk about for you. Is that 1, don't become the hearing aid police. 2, normalize hearing technology. And then also just provide other people that they can identify with and connect with inside their community. When we start to do this in these middle school years, I will say, I'm not going to say I have 100% success because I don't, but I will tell you the success factor is much, much, much higher